to another episode of Conversations, the show where we have the conversations that maybe not enough people are having when it comes to humans, human potential in the workplace, all things human and business and career. So we're here to talk about something that I'm very excited to talk about today. So framing for this episode, the S word will probably be used. So if that is something that you are not a fan of, you might want to check out of this episode and come back to me after and be like, can you debrief what we talked about? Because I will share this with you. I don't know if everyone knows this about me, but my favorite unit of measurement is a shit ton. Just because I think it's a really descriptive amount. Very descriptive large amount. And so today we're not just going to be talking about getting things done, getting stuff done, because quite honestly, there's a lot of people who do a lot of things, and we do a lot of things in our life, and we do a lot of things at work, and a lot of those things, a lot of that stuff doesn't really get us where we're trying to go. So we're not going to talk about things and stuff today. We're going to talk about getting shit done. So I can't guarantee how many times that word is going to come up. So if it makes you uncomfortable, again, we understand, and we'll see you next week. If you're down with it, then we are down with you in this conversation. Let us know that you are here. Share with us in the comments your experience, your questions, your thoughts, your perspectives as we move through the conversation today. We're going to touch on a whole bunch of different things that contribute to getting shit done. Shit that matters, not just things. And so please share your perspectives, because the more perspectives we have as part of the conversation, the better conversation we can have. Everybody's included. And a very special guest of ours is included today, the beautiful Misha, who is joining us from very stormy, hurricaney Nashville. So we're going to hope that internet connection keeps us together for the entire time. But yes, okay, so Misha, you and I met a little while ago.
We did.
And one of the things that I love, and your like whole business is based around, is this concept of like really getting shit done, right? Like doing
GSD.
You can see it in the background of her screen. And so I was like, we need to have this on my show. So before we get too far into it, Misha, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what was really like the kickoff point for you in saying like, these are things that need to come together to make these types of things happen?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on this show. It's our, how we met was so fun, and being able to do this with you and just having this conversation. And, over the 20 years of my professional life, right, I've just constantly looked at life and looked at my professional life and said, what's my approach? What's my way of doing things? Right. And early in my professional career, I was very quickly like, I just need a GSD at this. I need to get shit done for my kids. It's get stuff done, right? Because I have those tiny humans. But that's been my life motto. And so, it wasn't just something that I carried in my professional life. It was certainly something that was really birthed in my personal life. And, so it's that philosophy that we can GSD in our everyday lives, in every situation. And as I started to kind of piece this tapestry of my story together and telling my story, all of a sudden what really came to being was this GSD factor life. And the GSD factor life is based on 6 main attributes. And we're going to dive into that here throughout our conversation today. But, what I really started to realize was I thought my GSD was part of my professional life in the 20 years that I've been in insurance and technology, but realized that actually it started much earlier on and started at a very, very young age. And it's even predates me, right? That idea of getting shit done, that philosophy of applying that to everyday life is something that was passed down from my ancestors in a way. And so, really embodying that, and also realizing that each one of us has those GSD factor attributes within us.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to jump into the GSD factor attributes. But before we do that, I have a question, because when I was looking at the attributes and all the conversations that we had, I mean, personal branding is kind of my jam, right? So how does your personal brand and the GSD factor attributes, how are they related?
Great question. So for me, I actually have 3 brands. So I have my Misha Blameyer Farish, my MBF brand, and that's where I do a lot of my speaking engagements and my philanthropy work, right? It's a really important extension of what I do. But I apply very quickly. You see that I apply my GSD factor attributes, my GSD factor approach to things, even in my MBF brand. But then I also have a business brand called Etymology Consulting. And, we are in the tech space, the insurance space, and providing our business leaders and our clients and across industries with that ability to be able to identify and innovate and implement, but realize too that the GSD way of doing things, we can get, we get that shit done very quickly, right? We're very well known for getting work, hitting the ground running, getting it done quickly, and then mentoring, right, those employees and that organization as we move on to the next thing. So it's really fun to see how all 3 brands really tie together, because even when you are doing your philanthropy work, you are getting shit done. When you are doing your speaking, you're getting shit done. And then when you are doing your business side, you're getting shit done. But within GSD Factors, where we have our podcast, and I am and we'll be publishing a book later this year, and we are going to launch a community for that, along with universities of classes and courses on how do I get shit done in my life. And so all these things tie together. But what's really fun is to see how they all touch, and there is that connector of, let's apply this to our lives. And again, everybody on the professional side calls me the GSD boss, whereas my kids call me the GSD mama, because, how we're, whether it's a whiteboard of a working session to do a dream big workshop for a client, my husband and I will do a dream big whiteboard for my daughter's summer plans. Like, what are we doing this summer, right? So again, it all kind of ties and flows in and out and is always interconnected.
Oh, I love it. I always I don't know, I see a lot of things in like outfits in my examples, but I always think about this as if, like, okay, at the end of the day, I am Tracy. I look one way doing business LinkedIn live shows. I look a different way if I'm going to a black tie wedding. I look a different way if I'm playing in the sandbox with my 4-year-old, right?
Right.
And at the same time, I'm still me. I am me in all of those scenarios. I might look different. I might show up different. I might say different things. I might not use the S word at home with my 4-year-old because I hope he doesn't take it to school. While at the same time still having this like personal belief, like, is that bad? But I don't want to, right? So, anyway, the whole point is that, like, I am me. And thanks, Andrew. Superstar. I liked it. Superstar. You guys remember that? I can't think of that. Anyway.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah. Okay. So let's dive into some of these attributes, because just like a lot of things where people are like, okay, great, I'm just gonna like get the attributes and then I'll like go home and check off all these boxes and be able to do all the things. But there's a little more complexity to it than that. So is there one that you specifically want to start with today, Misha?
Yeah, so let's start with the first one. So there's 6, right? So there's 6 main attributes, and we talk about them throughout our socials, throughout our videos, throughout our book, throughout our podcasts. And you'll also see guest attributes make their appearance, right? As we are going throughout the year. But the first, the 6 are: be confident, be inquisitive, be imaginative, be present, be resilient, and be influential. But the first and foremost, the most important one is be confident, right? And it's knowing who you are, it's being confident in who you are, it's understanding that power and that confidence in knowing your true authentic self, right? Which you and I have co-blogged together about. It's knowing your voice, and it's speaking your truth so it's heard. And it's not just speaking your voice, but it's amplifying your voice. It's amplifying your microphone. It's leading by that example with that assertiveness, giving you that sense of empowerment and confidence. And one of my favorite stories to share relates to my daughter. And she came home from her first karate lesson, right? And she said, "Mom, do you know that my voice is my strongest weapon?" Now you can imagine, right, as a 4-year-old, as a female, right, coming home and being so empowered. And that has just stuck with her. And it has stuck, and it's kind of just become part of our family mantra, right? But that really is the essence of that, be confident and living out that confident assertiveness. And so if somebody, were to say to me, what's that one attribute that I can't live without? It is that be confident, because there's so many pieces and components and sub attributes to that, like knowing your true authentic self, and that's the world that you live in, certainly, but that would definitely be one of my favorites.
Yes. Okay. So I want to remind our audience that as we go through the attributes, so there's 6 of them, I would love to hear from your perspectives, like what has been real for you in these types. So we're talking about confidence right now. How has confidence manifested for you or not manifested for you? Or where are there places where you feel confident or places where you don't feel confident? There's a lot of good, juicy stuff in there. So if you're having any of those thoughts, please share them with us in the comments. Because I'm having a juicy thought related to confidence. I have many juicy thoughts. It sounds nice, right? Like, yes, be confident, right? But there's so many things that stop people from being confident. So when you guys are exploring the topic of confidence, what are some things, like before we even make any personal changes or life changes in which we feel confident, what are some of the things we need to pay attention to in terms of our confidence level to notice that maybe we're not ranking as high as we'd like to on the Be Confident scale?
So that's a great point. And we have developed these assessments, right? So there's going to be this GSD factor assessment that helps you with all 6, but then we're actually going to take a deep dive into each one of the attributes, right? To be able to help you identify and say, I really need to, elevate my Be Confidence muscle, and elevate that score and really work that muscle. So what do I need to do? But one of the foundations of the Be Confident is the who am I? Can I, and we go through exercises and discussions around, who do I think I am? So it could be a word cloud discussion of writing those words out that say, how many, what are the words that describe me? And then looking at those and saying, are they things that I do, or are they things that I am? Right. And so looking at that, but then also saying on the flip side, if you were to talk to someone about me, what would they say about me? Right. And then all of a sudden doing that analysis and looking at it and going, okay, this is how I think I am, and then this is how other people think I am. Is there a disconnect? Are they aligned? Right. This kind of who I am is a really great, it's a topic that a lot of people are doing in their mental health care, and, and they're in those conversations with the mental health therapists and others. Right. And I think it's a really important discussion. Another fun exercise we'll do is say, what's that one item in your space that is like, okay, this is me, right? And mine would be my sign in my office that says team get shit done, right? Because that is just the essence of like who I am. It's team, it's get shit done, right? And we for us, like, it's team get shit done, but as a family, it's family get shit done, right? Especially once the kids are older and can use the word. But it's that idea of saying, what's that one object, right? That, okay, this is me. I think my daughter would probably say, For her, it's a rainbow. She loves, she loves all things colors. She loves inclusivity. She wants to make sure that everybody is a part of it, right? And so, we're all different colors. We're all different. We all bring something, but when we come together, we're this beautiful rainbow, right? And so for her, at a very young age, she's been able to go, well, that's me. Like, that's what I love, right? And so it's that simple exercise of introspecting, retrospecting, and saying, who am I, with, kind of words to describe me, and then also what others describe. But then it's also saying, when somebody says, tell me about yourself, right? What do you explain to them, right? Is it just, well, I'm a role, right? Like, so I'm a role of something, or I do something, or I'm a title of something, right? Or is it that, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a speaker, I'm a technologist, I'm a mom, right? What is it that you explain to them? And what's your elevator pitch, right? And as you're talking about yourself, because I think people want to hear about us. They want to hear about you. They want to hear your story. And learning to be able to kind of tell your story about who you are, and not making it necessarily about what you do, but what is your passion and love, and what drives you, what energizes you every day.
Ooh, I love that you said the word energizes, because I think that is one of the things that, to me, is really connected to confidence, right? There's a different level of energy that comes to the table when people have that confidence. And a lot of times people are like, oh, if I just was like more like that person or more like that person. But really what we're talking about, I like to frame it as, I always ask people, what are you all about? Right? I care very little about what you do. And I want to know why you do what you do. Right? Like, why are you a lawyer? Why are you an entrepreneur? Why are you a mom? Right? Like, all of these things. I love to know a good why. And when we have that exploration done, and I think one of the things I see too from the personal branding perspective is there is a like building activity, right? Because there's seeing yourself for the first time as like, wow, yeah, that's me. And then I don't know if you've experienced this, Misha, but I definitely have, where people will be like, you're so Andrew does this to me all the time. Andrew in the chats, he's like, Tracy is a superstar. And I'm like, oh, okay, I have to like receive that. Right?
Yes.
But like, sometimes it's hard because we learn from society to be humble and all of these things. And there is, in terms of building confidence, there is a certain amount of like, hey, I did that, right? Like, I did that. I created that space, or I delivered that project, or like, the team, and I'm with you, Misha, like, team is my jam. But at the same time, you're like, the team isn't fully complete without me either.
Sure.
And my role in the team, right? So how can I celebrate those things about myself? Because those are the types of small activities that can help you build that confidence.
It's true. And depending on what industry or profession you decide to go into, right? I went into insurance and financial services, and sure. So, I'm a type A personality, right? I am extremely confident. I speak my voice. I know my truth, right? I curse, I drink, right? Like, and I go to church, right? And in the South, everybody was like, whoa. And I had leaders that were mentoring me that said, if you want to be a female in the insurance space or in the tech space, you're going to have to act and look the part. And you do not act and look the part today. And it was that defining moment early in my professional career that said, well, but that's not who I am, right? Like, I know who I am. Like, I knew in high school that it was a dream to get married down the road, but I knew that I was going to hyphenate my name. Like, I had a guy that was like, that, wanted to date me and said, hey, are you excited to like graduate and get married? And I was like, I'm excited to go on to my next chapter, and I'm excited to eventually get married. And he was like, well, yeah, I mean, aren't you excited to take on somebody else's name? And I said, no, like, I'm keeping my name. I'm hyphenating. Like, I'm going to hyphenate my name because I know who I am, and I am a Blameyer, and whoever I marry, I will take on as a hyphenated name. No joke. Said, is that allowed? I said, oh yes, it's very allowed, right? And so again,
thank you for arriving in the 21st century.
Right. And so, but think about that. And I think it's different by demographics, and I think it's different by areas and locations. But, having that, and having that, and then going into going into kind of the insurance financial institution space, and having that, like, oh, you're so young. But then when you go out in public being like, well, you're expiring soon. Like, you need to go ahead and get married, right? And have a family. And so it's just living these two worlds, right? But then in that professional space going, this is who I am. Like this, like I can hang with the crowd. I can talk the sports. I can golf, like all these things. And, being pulled to the side by the female, leaders saying, that's not how we act, right? That's not what we say. We don't do those things. And that was really that crossroads that I faced early in my professional career, to say, okay, I could conform, but lose myself, or I'm just going to continue to do this. And what was so funny was my now husband met Misha, the true, authentic self Misha, who was always called into a room to fix the shit, right? And he saw me in full force, right? And turned to a buddy and goes, who's that? And they were like, oh, she's brought in to just get shit done. Like, and that was my husband's first observance of me, right? And then, of course, and so then we became friends and hung out after that, and then we dated, and then we were later married. But he realized, like, that was me in the office, but that was also me outside the office. And so again, when you fully embrace who you are, being confident in that, being that confident assertiveness, and being that true, authentic self, you're here to stay.
Okay. So I love all of this, and random LinkedIn user is also saying I love it. LinkedIn user, if you can tell us who you are, then we can address you by name. That would be more enjoyable for both of us. Okay, so a couple things, and Andrew asked made a really great point, which I want to come back to.
Sure.
About, let us not forget that a work situation can affect one's confidence. And I think that, like, in your example, there's a lot of people, like, I went to business school, right? I feel like there's this underlying narrative in business school that you, like, mirror other people to be successful.
Sure.
Even just like when you're going and your dress code, like mirror +1, right? Like all these rules that they don't really think about in terms of how they embed into our psyche. And there would be a lot of people, and there are a lot of people who hear those types of narratives like, oh no, we don't do that, right? Like, that's not how we show up. And people start to edit themselves instead of saying, oh, maybe no thanks, you can do that if you want to, but I'm not gonna do that, and I'm gonna stand out. Oh, it's Alyssa. Hello, Alyssa. It's great to see you. So I think that is, I would say that's a place where we can start to look, is if we hear those things like, we don't do that, and by nature you don't identify with that then maybe that's just the wrong we.
Yes.
You. And there's
another
exactly right. Elsewhere.
And I think what's important, and I love that he's brought it up, right? Because I'm a strong believer that you can learn something from anything, right? You learn what to do, and you learn what not to do. So when you have those traumatic events in your life, and you will, right? It's a matter of saying, am I going to deflect this, right? And kind of put up that guard, right? Now, sometimes those bullets are going to pierce, certainly, and you need to sit with it, and you need to, you need to sit with those feelings, be present with those feelings, right? Because you are human, right? But in those moments, it's saying, okay, am I going to walk away, or am I going to pull up my resilience, right? And say, okay, my confidence has been injured. So therefore, my resilience has to activate to bring up my resilience, right? And so And it's at those times that and we talk about the GSD Factor Clan, right? And we talk about our GSD Factor Insiders Board, and we go into that more in the book. But when you are talking about that, my confidence has been injured, right? Or it's been hit. What are the things that I can do to lift it up? And sometimes we don't have it internally, so we have to look externally. And that's when we can reach out to our clan members or our insiders board to say, this is what's happened. I need your input. I need that help, right? And it's okay to ask for help. And in fact, it makes us a fuller person when we do activate those different attributes, but also those different tools in our toolbox, right? Whether it's our clan, whether it's a podcast, whether it's those those inspirational leaders, those coaches, those mentors, sometimes it's a priest, sometimes it's a counselor or a therapist, whatever it is, you are going to get injured, you are going to get hit. But now, as I am activating my resilience, what am I doing in place to provide myself with a little bit of armor? And I love to think of, we have so many Avenger movies to look to, right? And so we have our shield and we have our breastplate and we have our sword, right? All of the different things, male or female, right? Because I think what a lot of people forget is, we hear a lot of conversations about our female counterparts, but our male counterparts experience this just as much, right? And so I think it's really important to say, you know what? My confidence is going to get hit from time to time, but how do I respond to it?
I love that so much. And I want to, so I don't know if the rest of you heard it, but we kind of moseyed into another one of the GSD Factor attributes, which is resilience. And I'd like to dig a little bit more into resilience, because in your experience, Misha, where does resilience come from within inside of us?
Sure. So we define resilience, right, as that choice to persevere, that activation of our stamina, that grit, right? Acknowledging that life can be shit sometimes, but we have to learn and grow and turn the negatives into positives, right? And we have to say, you know what? If something doesn't work, I'm going to pause. I'm going to retrospect for my my agile masters out there, and say, okay, I'm going to retrospect and I'm going to pivot and I'm going to relaunch, right? And so I think what happens, that resilience, and some people experience perseverance in different ways, right? It's things that have happened to us. It's things that have happened to our families. Some experience it at very young ages. Some people don't experience things until later in life, right? And it's whatever life is throwing at you. But it's finding those ways to go, I'm going to push forward. I'm going to persevere. I'm going to rise up, right? Rising from the ashes and saying, try me again, right? And exercising that muscle, right? And so I was taught it, and I've experienced a lot of life in my 40 years, right? From illnesses and from life-threatening illnesses to losing my dad at 32, to so many other pivots and changes of plans that have happened throughout my life. But each time I was faced with one of those, it was, okay, I'm going to be present with it for a moment, because it's okay for us to have that, what I'll call couch time and shows and bonbons. But what am I going to do after I've given myself that time to that moment to feel those emotions, cry those tears, talk it out with someone? Now, what happens after is really where you start to build that resilience muscle. It's that perseverance. It's saying, I had a shit day yesterday. I'm going to have a nice bourbon. I'm going to cry it out. I'm going to go to sleep, and I'm going to wake up refreshed, and not and say, this is a new day, right? This is a brand new start. It's a brand new day. I'm going to get hit again. But guess what? I've taken a lesson and a nugget with me, and I'm going to carry it with me, right? We learn from experience. We learn from observing. We learn from absorbing, right? And saying, okay, I'm going to learn from this situation. What can I learn from this situation? And then say, okay, I now have that nugget with me. I'm going to carry it through on to the next thing. And all of a sudden you've built that resilience, and you can build that resilience even if you may not know that it's resilience, right? And I think that that's the other piece that people don't realize is, perseverance and resilience really got great work during COVID, right? During our COVID-19, right? And people, sometimes you don't see the resilience or the perseverance until after, which is why it's really important to retrospect. So like my husband and I have gone back and looked at that 2020, 2021 year and go, oh, wow, we got a lot of shit done, right? Like, here are the things that we learned, and here's how we grew, and here's how our kids grew, and so on and so forth. And so it's really important, I think, to pause at times throughout your year, throughout your life, and say, what have I done? And take that inventory, and what have I looked at professionally? Most companies have those performance evaluations, right? That forces you to say, okay, oh, wow, okay, I learned all these things, but I don't think we do it enough personally, right? And one of the things that a personal coach of mine has always recommended is writing your future self a letter, right? And it could be when you're looking at a job transition, a life transition, but it's a letter that says, hey, I'm going to kind of give you the tips of, what to be cautious of. I'm going to give you the tips on what to enjoy on this journey. I'm going to give you the things that I want you to keep in mind and carry with you. And I want you to kind of think of a timeline related to this next chapter. And you write that letter to your future self, and then you read that letter at times and milestones throughout. And what you start to realize is, as you do that, is there is resilience that's coming out of it. There's grit, and there's stamina, and there's perseverance. But again, you may not have seen it because you didn't take the pause to be present and really congratulate yourself on where you've been and what you've accomplished.
Oh, I really love that recommendation. My friend Misha Patel Owen always says, take it to the bank, right?
Yes.
So like we take money to the bank, take those things, take those times where you notice like, dude, I just did a good job hanging in there. Right?
Yes.
Because society doesn't want to celebrate those things, right? They want to celebrate new clients and big projects and cars and trips and all those things. And those things aren't bad to celebrate. It's just that there's so many of those little steps along the way that can remind us in a time where we're not feeling like we can be resilient, that can show us like, oh, I've done this before. I have done this. So it gives me more confidence in being able to do it again. So I love that.
And it doesn't have to be big. It can be small. It can be the smallest of thing that you do, right? Yeah. And the story I'll share is I came back from one of my maternity leaves, and I was a pumping mom. So, pumping in my office and refrigerating my milk, and was HR, and my boss came to me and said, listen, your milk offends some people in the fridge. So you need to put it into a container that doesn't look like breast milk. It needs to look like a lunchbox so we don't see it. Sure, that was a massive hit to my confidence, because here I am, I'm a working parent, right? I've just had a baby and I'm back at work, right? And I am juggling and doing all the things. And sure enough, that day I was like, whoa, like it was such a piercing experience. It was a hurtful experience. It was a traumatic experience, right? Mm-hmm. And so the next day I was, it was like, well, what am I going to do? Right. And can I show my face? Can I, can I go? Like, what am I going to do? Right. And so for me, it was just being able to get in the car that next morning and drive to work. For me, that was like my resilient moment, right? Mm-hmm. And it was, okay, now I'm going to get into the building, right? And it was those little moments, right, along the way, and being able to build that up. And so sometimes it doesn't have to be this massive thing. It can be those really small steps. But when you realize and look behind, you've actually climbed the staircase.
Yeah, you've probably climbed a mountain, most of us at this point.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to go to Andrew's question. He is asking about how leaders can teach employees to be resilient. So, any thoughts that you have on that, Misha?
No, that's great. I love the question. Thanks, Andrew. So I really believe that as a leader, right, it's important to be transparent with our employees and having those conversations and having those dialogues with them and checking in with them, right? It's not just checking in about the work, it's checking in about them as a human, right? And checking in to see how things are going. And when you are a leader, it's also checking in not just on their skill sets, but how are they equipped for those skill sets? Is it confidence? Is it resilience? Is it that active listening that they need to do, right? And so, certainly in those early days, right, as you're kind of coming alongside that employee to work on some things, right, you're probably going to be in those meetings or be on those emails or be on those phone calls. And in those moments where resilience could have been activated and they could have stepped up, it's that moment to say, to either step up and do it for them and say, listen, I'm going to come in and I'm going to stand here and explain to you, I'm going to stand up for my employee here on this. That is demonstrating resilience, right? And that confidence. It's also when an email comes through saying, hey, let's have a conversation and role play what you could say in this email, and having that dialogue back and forth to say, so there's two types of communication you could do, right? You could do the this type of communication, or we can use this as a lesson of resiliency and confidence, right? To be able to exercise this muscle, and you could do this type of email. And once you've done that a few times, it's going to become like a good habit for that employee to go, oh, I've got the hang of this, right? Or, you to say, if there's a phone call coming up, prep them for that phone call, prepare them for that phone call, do that role play with them, because confidence and resilience comes with practice. And when you say, okay, this is the agenda for the call today, let's think about what are some of the conversations or questions that are going to come out. How would you respond to that question? How would you respond to that counter? Or maybe it's a presentation and it's equipping them with those notes and those talking points, right? To say, okay, if somebody asks this, here are some sample answers. And if somebody asks this, right, but actors and actresses, they practice in the mirror and they practice with their fellow actors and actresses. And it's the same way, right? I will practice in a mirror. I will practice with my business partner. I do it with my children, right? And so it's just having those practice opportunities. Now, if there's a situation where the employee wasn't as confident or wasn't as resilient as they could have been, it's taking that moment to pause and gently and kindly saying, listen, this was fine, but can I share with you an example of how you could do this a little differently that would really show some additional grit and some additional perseverance, right? And when you come to it from that perspective, the employee is much more open to those coachings and those opportunities.
So lots of good tips there. One of the things that is like really coming up for me as you share these tips, Misha, is because I know you live the GSD factor life, and a lot of the leaders I have had don't live the GSD factor life. So I think it's important, if you're a leader, from a leader's perspective, to be able to do these things for yourself, right? If you feel like if you don't have the capability of being resilient, I don't know how easy it is for you to train someone else or teach someone else how to do that. And so I always think from the leadership perspective, it's important to know these things. The leading by example is a thing, right? So if I can show up and I can be resilient in the face of a failure, in the face of a conflict, in the face of being presented with something that is completely new to me, then I create the space for other people to do that. At the same time, the roadblock of leadership all the time, right? Is that as much as a leader as you might want to provide those spaces, there's still an acceptance that has to be done from an employee, right? And in your examples, Misha, I mean, it seems like something somebody wouldn't want to say no to, but there will be employees that have had, I like to call it corporate trauma, right?
Yes.
That say like, oh no, like I'm a failure now and I'm going to get fired because I didn't do this. And you don't actually think that as a leader, and you do everything you can to create the space. And at the same time, there's that individual GST factor desire, right?
Yes.
Does an individual want to live the GSD life? Because if they don't, we can tell them the attributes all day, every day, and it won't actually make a difference.
Absolutely. And I, anytime I'm going into clients, right, or doing my own coachings, and Andrew's spot on, right? The fact is that, especially if I'm going into a client where I'm doing more of my etymology work, right? And we're consulting and, we're setting up a PMO, or we're doing doing an audit or whatever it is, right? Because the GSD kind of just comes out in everything that I do, it's a natural thing. But, when I'm having those conversations, there's ways that you can just kind of drop, I like kind of like drip campaigns, right? To just kind of see like, well, how would it, does this resonate? How would it feel if you responded like this, right? And what happens is those people that are like, oh gosh, I've had a trauma. This is triggering to me, so on and so forth. You have to listen. And it's that active listening. It's that act of being present with them, having that empathy with them to say, okay, I hear you, right? Like, and I had a coaching session this week, right? And somebody, we were working on how does this person start to get use her voice more in the writing world, in the social media world, right? And she'd had this fear of, if I say the wrong thing, it's out there forever. Or if I say the wrong, if I write the wrong thing, and I was wrong, right? And I just said to her, dip your toe in slowly, right? Just make your first comment like, this was a great conversation, or thanks for having this. Like, just start things small, right? And start small. And then as you build that confidence and build that resilience, you'll be able to build, you'll build your stamina up. It's just like, I can't, I'm not a runner, right? I've had 6 knee surgeries, so not a runner. But for my fellow runner friends, right? You go out and you don't just train for a marathon or a triathlete or a triathlon. You have to go and you have to build, right? And you have to build your way up. It's the same thing with all these attributes. You slowly start. It's the art of doing something. It's the art of showing up, right? You keep showing up. You do something, anything, right? And then all of a sudden, right, they will start to blossom and grow. And if they choose not to, that's okay, right? Because there's been plenty of times when people are like, yeah, I want to do that. And then when they get down to the work, they're like, I don't want to do that. And it's like, all right, awesome. No worries, right? Like, you've been exposed to it now. It's up to you to take it. Whether or not you take it or not, that's totally up to you. The other thing I want to say is, for those individuals that are, they want to GSD, but their leader is not a GSDer, what do they do? Right? And that's where you go outside. You go outside to your clan, to your insiders board, to your network. You get that coach, you get that friend, you get that person, and you start to fill and learn from other things, from podcasts, from classes, from different courses, from books, from articles, all the different things. And so even if you don't have a GSD leader, you can actually start to really build up your GSD, and really you are managing up now, right? And so you are demonstrating to this leader what it means to GSD, and by proxy, you're going to elevate them. But for those that, are like, I want to be a GSDer, but I don't have a GSD leader, can I still grow? Absolutely. 100% you can. You build and grow yourself, and either your leader will see that, oh my goodness, what's happening in their transformation, I want to be a part of, or you outgrow them, right? And you outgrow those relationships and those partnerships and those business, and you either move to another team or move to another department or move to another company, and that's okay. But don't ever feel like that is a ceiling that you can't break, from that perspective.
Oh, so true. Because this plays back to Andrew's previous comment about how a work situation can affect your confidence, right? And
Yes.
at the end of the day, I've actually had a leader like that, where like I'm all about mindset and personal development, professional development, and I outgrew her, right? And that's not actually bad. I think that sometimes we think we're just supposed to stay in this space forever and there's a CEO and I'm below that, so I shouldn't outgrow. But if you do, because of the things that you mentioned, a couple of things in that last answer that are also attributes, right? Being present, being inquisitive, right? Andrew was talking about listening with compassion, right? So not just asking questions and then not paying attention to what the answers are, but being inquisitive and being present to those things. And it's okay, right? It's okay. And not everyone will grow. It's like if you look at a garden, right? Not every plant grows under the same conditions. Not every plant grows and blooms at the same time or blooms the same kind of bloom, right? And nor is it supposed to be like that. It's about embracing our growth pattern, our bloom, how much color we bring to the world. And that might not be in the right garden all the time. So I think it's really important to also realize that the more you practice these attributes, the more you learn about yourself, the more likely it is that you might identify that you're in the wrong garden.
Yes.
And you need to go and be replanted. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your flower. It just means that you're in the wrong garden.
That's right. And I think if you are a leader, if you are a GSD leader, right, and you are looking at your garden of flowers, right? And I love that because I actually am doing some events with some other amazing GSDers, and we're actually calling it the Women in Bloom event, right? But when you are looking at your garden of a team, right, and you say, okay, I am the new leader, I am a GSDer, and you are raising the bar to that new GSD level, some of those flowers are going to grow to meet you. Others are not. And it's being okay with letting them go, right? It's being okay to say, I'm going to give you the roadmap. I'm going to give you the prescriptive steps that I want you to take to be a GSDer. But if you're not going to be that, that's okay, right? Like, let me help you. And I mean, people that I have either had to let go or I've had to grow and let go, or people that I've had to, even fire in some cases. It's situations where I'm like, this was just not the place for you, but I want to still help you grow and I want you to be successful in all that you do. And so it's having that compassion, it's having that empathy, it's saying, listen, this is where I'm elevating this team to. Either meet it or let me help you find the next thing, right? Like a lot of times I've written those referrals or references for people that are like, I'm going to leave the team. And I'm like, no problem. Like, let me support you in that. But it's also, especially in the consulting world, right? It's coming into situations and having those conversations and saying, I'm a GSD consultant, right? This is what I do. This is why I've been brought in. And some people will embrace that. Other people will not embrace it. Other people are so traumatized that they're just like, there's no help for me, right? And so people say, well, how do you deal with those? They're just a slower drip. They're a slower drip campaign, right? It's going to take, it is really going to take those drops over a period of time. You have those people that are ready to drink out of your GSD fire hydrant, right? And they're just like, yes, I'm here for this. And then there's other people that are like, I'm going to take you a teacup at a time. And then there's other people that are like, I'm going to take a drop like once a month, right? And whatever that situation is, whether it's coaching clients or whether it's, as I'm working in with clients, but finding those people, it's knowing enough to say, you're reading the room and you're reading that audience, and you learn it over time. It's like a muscle, but you go, okay, they're not quite ready for my full on GSD. but I can start determining what kind of drip campaign they're going to be is also a really important step. And that's when you are a GSD leader, that's when you are a GSDer that's needing to branch out and be a bright light in your organization. Everybody's going to take that information just a little differently.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just, this is the human experience, right? No two humans are the same. And some people might want to drink from the confidence hose, but need to be dripped in the imagination arena,
Yes.
right? Like everybody
Yes.
has their different experience, their different resonance with certain topics.
Yes.
And so it's just important to take that into consideration with others, but also with yourself. Right? If you're looking at these principles and you're saying like, yes, I want to live the GSD life, right? And that's awesome. Come and chat with one of us. We would love to chat with you, but
totally
getting shit done. But expect that about yourself, right? You might have a different relationship with resilience than you have with being present, and that is okay. So this is why I think it's important to have these conversations about the human experience, because not even however many of us are live here today, no two of us are the same, even though we all showed up for a conversation about getting shit done. Like we have a desire to do that, and we all have different place we're at on the journey. So give yourself that grace to know this is where you are, this is where you can go if you have the intention there. I want to just quickly share Andrew's comment here about feeling scared. Used to be scared of failing, scared of talking, scared of being active, and I'm no longer like that. And Andrew, if you're open to sharing in the comments, I would love to hear your perspective on what allowed you to get there, because I think there are a lot of people that have fear. But I'm going to try something on, and then like Misha, these are your principles, so you can clarify. But one of the other principles is being influential.
Yes.
And when I think about fear, and this is just like triggered by Andrew's question, but when I think about fear, a lot of that fear, being scared to talk, scared to fail, scared of being active, I think that's almost like society's way of stopping us from being influential, right? Because if we're scared, if we're behind the scenes, we don't say anything, we can't possibly meet that attribute of being influential. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that. And if Andrew has, and we're going totally long because we always do that. This is the last thing we're talking about. We might have to have Misha back for another episode. But what are your thoughts on that, on the being influential, conquering fear?
Absolutely. No, I love that. And I think, so when we've defined our be influential, right? It's that capability to lead by example as that actionable leader, connecting with those around you, looking to the future, and also bringing along the next generation alongside you and mentoring them so that they can stand on your shoulders, right? And so even when we think about it from the fear perspective, right? Even in those moments of fear, it's saying, I am here, right? And it's saying, I am going to, look to a leader. I'm going to take the action, but I'm also going to bring alongside with me, right? And I'm going to embrace, right? I'll share, right? We're under a tornado warning here in Nashville today. And so, we have our safe space, and, my kids are home from school because of it, right? So what happens in that moment when our sirens go off and our lights go off, right? We head to our safe zone. And in that moment, I am feeling a little anxiety, a little fear, right? I've lived through a couple of these, but my kids are also feeling that fear. And so what am I going to do in that moment? In that moment, as the mom, as a leader, right? I'm going to be influential in that. I'm going to say, I am scared too, right? I am scared too. This is a scary situation. I'm not invalidating their feelings. I'm not invalidating what they're experiencing, what we're experiencing in that moment. And I'm going to embrace them and say, but we've got this. We can do this. And so in that moment of even me being scared, it's acknowledging that I'm scared, giving space to being fearful, giving space to those feelings and thoughts and worries, but then saying, okay, in that moment, am I the only one that's feeling this, or are there other people that are feeling this? And a lot of times there's other people feeling this. So then it's surrounding yourself with those people and virtually embracing them, right? And saying, okay, we're all feeling this a little bit. So now how do we kind of come together? And all of a sudden you are now feeling those feelings of encouragement and empowerment and validation. So many times individuals say, I thought I was alone until I heard your story. And now I know that I'm not alone. Right. And I think, being influential when you are experiencing that fear is acknowledging it, giving it space, but then also starting just to reach out and ask, having those conversations with others, because you're not alone and you're not the only one experiencing that.
Oh, this is a really good point, because again, I think that sometimes when people think of confidence and resilience and being influential, that it's like an erasure of fear and uncertainty and doubt and those types of things. And that's not true. It's not that the GSD life has no fear or no like situations that are painful or cause grief or any of those things. It's about building up your arsenal. You use the word muscle a couple of times, right? Like building your muscle in these arenas. So when those things happen, so when you are afraid, you can show up influential and be afraid. That's okay. That there is room for all of it in the human experience. And I think that's an important point for leaders to remember as well, right? Like, we're in an organization. A lot of time people are looking to us for answers, especially in times like we could lose Misha at any time due to a siren.
Right? Exactly.
Or like what happened during COVID, right? When nobody knew what was going on, right? And that doesn't mean we're not afraid. That doesn't mean we know. That doesn't mean we have all the answers. And how can we be confident? How can we be resilient? How can we be imaginative? How can we be present? How can we be influential, so that we can bring all those things together? And even in the face of uncertainty, which quite honestly, on a business perspective, most of us are living in right now,
right?
We can live the GSD life. So that's, we're going to wrap it up, because like literally we could talk about this all day. Andrew, thank you so much for your contributions today. He just had the question I posed to him about failing. Realized that he was afraid to hear the word no, but that no won't always be no. And these are the cool, like, little mindset shifts that can help us.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
He decided to build a community where he was seen, heard, valued, and understood. These are the types of actions that you can take, right? If you're not in a community, that's how your business Peeps was born, right? My community, because I didn't feel like I had that kind of support. So I went and I built one. All of this is available to you. And just like any other conversation that you might get in that is very meaningful to you, it's important to stay in the conversation. So it's good to learn the GSD factor attributes. Go back and listen to the replay. You'll hear all of them multiple times. Or go to Misha's website. I'm sure they're just like there. But this is about learning and figuring out how these things come to life in your life. And so if people are looking for more information, where's the best place for them to find you, Misha?
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And thank you so much for having this conversation today. And thank you to everybody that provided comments and questions. That was awesome. They can find me at gsdfactor.com. And that will have everything, that will have everything about the podcast and the offerings that we offer. But also you can find me on LinkedIn, Misha Blameyer Farish. I'm the only one. But yes, please connect with me on either LinkedIn or come out to our website, gsdfactor.com, and would love to connect with you. And, we are, always, we always are looking to how can we engage with individuals, whether it's those personal coachings or whether we're wanting, or organizations, right? Those leaders that are saying, I want to GSD, so I need to be mentored, but I also want my organization to GSD. But even a lot of times I've done couples GSDing before, right? Now, so all these different conversations are happening because, these attributes are so approachable and they're so livable, and once you do kind of get them, they start to make sense and they really start to enhance, and I really believe it brings about a fullness of life. And even when you've had and experienced those traumas and those setbacks and those triggers, you can reignite those GSD factor attributes in your own life.
Oh, important point. Even if maybe they're not there today, it doesn't mean they weren't ever there and that they can't
Correct.
come back, or that you can't build that muscle if you haven't built it yet. All right. This was so great. Thank you so much for all of your time today, Misha. For everyone who's in the conversation, again, I encourage you to stay in the conversation. Apparently, Andrew's already connected with you on LinkedIn, by the way. But connect with each other. Ask each other questions about these things, right? How is it living in your life or not living in your life? And how might more of it be available, because we can stay in the conversation together. So with that, we're going to let Misha go just in case she has to head over to her storm shelter. The internet, thank you to the internet. Misha's internet for holding out the entire time. That was awesome. And until next time, everybody, permission to do you.